Three spine-chilling true night drive encounters that reveal sinister secrets and unexplained terror. Sarah's phone buzzed as she pulled out of the hospital parking lot, the soft glow illuminating her exhausted face. The night shift had been relentless, but nothing could compare to the creeping sensation that wrapped around her as she navigated the quiet streets of her suburban town. Shadows flitted on the edges of her peripheral vision, close enough to send shivers racing down her spine. She shook it off, attributing the fears to fatigue and the long hours that blurred her reality. But tonight felt different. Wrong.as, she cruised down familiar roads. The comforting sight of the park where her children played now loomed larger, haunted by the whisper of trees swaying in the night breeze. An eerie chill slipped into her car, wrapping around her neck like an icy hand. A nurse she waved to every night glared back at her, eyes devoid of warmth, a shudder running through Sarah as she recalled the ghost stories the locals spun about the very streets she traveled. The legends of shadowy creatures in the darkness whispered of hauntings that revealed the underbelly of suburban life. With every turn, Sarah's heart raced faster. Was she imagining things? The corner store's flickering sign seemed to flicker a warning. The rusted bell above the door barely hung by a single nail. And behind her, she could feel it, a truck had started to tail her. Its headlights spilled over her rearview mirror, an oppressive glare pushing on her thoughts like a predator following its prey. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, jaw clenched. A car on a quiet street shouldn't send her into a spiral of fear. She tried to shake it off. Just another driver, right? Before she could convince herself otherwise, a police officer casually waved her down, his familiar face suddenly twisted by something sinister in the low beams of the headlights. "Late night, ma'am?" The words left his lips, but the underlying threat shimmered in the air. She forced a smile and answered, but her pulse quickened. This wasn't the friendly interaction she'd counted on. Those eyes, they bore into her as if assessing her vulnerability. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Sarah's world began to unravel. Friends had started to vanish, slipping out of her life like shadows. She caught whispers behind her back in the grocery store, furtive glances exchanged. Each one spoke volumes. Nobody waved anymore. The comforting faces she once relied upon now stood cold and distant. Each turn down the street felt like a descent into a nightmare. The laughter of children, once a beacon of hope, now echoed eerily, tainted by the suspicion of unspoken secrets. As she drew closer to home, the weight pressing upon her chest became unbearable. Bare trees loomed over the streets like watchful sentinels in the night, each twist and turn fraught with unseen eyes staring out from the darkness. The air thickened with fear, and adrenaline rushed through her veins. It wasn't paranoia, it was a feeling, deep in her gut, that something was horribly wrong. She dared to glance backwards, and there it was, glimpses of faces watching from the shadows, hidden among the dense trees by the edge of town. Her pulse thundered loudly in her ears as she passed her street. Heart racing, she slammed on the brakes. Something, or someone, was waiting for her in the dark, and whatever it was, she just stumbled into a web of terrifying truths that would either save her family or doom them all. The silence in the car was deafening as Sarah sat frozen behind the wheel, her breath quickening with every second that passed. She swallowed hard, leaning closer to the window, trying to make sense of the shadows hovering at the edges of her street. The dim light from the street lamp flickered, and for a moment, she thought she saw them, the faces just outside her comprehension, twisted and watchful. That a knock jolted her back to reality, powerful and insistent. The window rattled in its frame, and instinct urged her to lock the doors. She turned, heart racing, and found a stranger peering in, face partially hidden under the brim of a tattered cap. Dark, empty eyes drilled into her, sending shocks of fear cascading down her spine. "Hey, you okay?" he called, voice rough but cloaked in concern. She couldn't speak. A whimper escaped her lips, and the man stepped back, studying her reaction like a predator assessing its prey. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, the twinkle of menace hiding behind false sympathy. "You don't know what's going on." He leaned in closer, and her stomach dropped as she caught a glimpse of something glinting in his belt, an unknown weapon, or something worse. Without realizing it, Sarah's foot hovered above the gas pedal. She needed to drive, needed to disappear from this nightmarish situation. "Please go away," she barely managed, her voice trembling as panic seeped in like a thick fog. The man's frown deepened, and he muttered something she couldn't make out. The truck that had been trailing her was bearing down, narrowing the space. Panic ignited her instincts. She hit the gas without thinking, tires screeching against the asphalt as she tore down the road, heart pounding in time with the thundering engine. The stranger's figure receded quickly into the background, but she felt that she hadn't seen the last of him. Twists and turns blurred into a frantic blur as she navigated the maze of darkened streets, the truck hot on her tail. Shadows coiled around her, thickening in the spaces between the houses. Desperation clawed at her throat. As she passed the edges of the park, the streetlights flickered like fireflies trapped in a dying world. Then, she caught the gleam of more faces huddled together, watching her drive past with a morbid curiosity. They melted into the dark like wraiths, as if they'd been waiting, too. Waiting for her. The thought made her stomach churn. Were they all involved? As she neared another intersection, the truck swung wide, cutting her off. She veered sharply, managing to avoid a collision, but sending the car skidding onto the gravel shoulder of the road. Time slowed as she breathed in the metallic scent of danger, her pulse echoing in her ears like a war drum. Instinct told her to turn back, to head away from whatever fate awaited, but something deeper, darker urged her deeper into the belly of the beast. With her options running thin, she pressed onward. In the distance, an abandoned factory loomed, windows shattered like the eyes of the lost. A flicker of movement caught her attention. It seemed to beckon her further. Was it safety or another trap? She hesitated, weighing her choices, suddenly aware of the depth of her solitude. Then the headlights of the truck flickered ominously, and she knew she had no choice. The factory was her only chance, a refuge or a prison. As she sped toward uncertainty, the whispers gnawed at her mind, echoing the fears that had haunted her since the start of this dreadful night. What lay waiting beyond those grimy walls? Her heart thundered as she pulled into the loading dock. Would she find answers, or was this the beginning of her final nightmare? The engine sputtered as Sarah parked the car, the headlights slicing through the gloom of the factory's entrance. Shadows danced in the corners as the beam illuminated broken pallets and rusting metal debris scattered like forgotten memories. The air was still, almost too still for her racing heart. She was out of time. The truck's headlights flickered against the rearview mirror, and a cold dread slithered up her spine. They were coming, and she had to move. Taking a shaky breath, she gripped the door handle, scanning the darkened expanse of the factory. A single flickering bulb hung suspended from the ceiling, casting erratic shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. The thud of her heartbeat echoed in her ears as she slipped out of the car. The ground crunched under her feet, gravel digging into her soles. She hesitated, peering into the yawning darkness, suddenly conscious of her vulnerability. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, yet somewhere in her gut a rebellious ember flickered. There must be something, a clue, a way out of this nightmare. The factory loomed, its entrance gaping wide like a hungry mouth. She stepped cautiously inside, the smell of metal and decay instantaneously assaulting her senses. A light flickered again, catching in a shattered window at the far end. With frantic steps, she moved toward it, each footfall feeling like it echoed through the cavernous space. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Were the faces she had seen earlier just a figment of her imagination? Or were they part of this haunting? A chill wormed its way up her spine, and she shivered at the thought of countless eyes watching from the dark corners, waiting for her to make a mistake. She crept forward. The factory creaked ominously, the sound slicing through the silence. Was it normal? Or was it something else? The whispers in her mind grew louder, almost forming words, a warning, perhaps. But before she could decipher them, the horrific sound of metal grinding cut through the air, like a beast awakening from a long slumber. Turning, Sarah felt panic push against her chest as the source revealed itself. A rusted conveyor belt began to move. Items appeared, slowly rolling toward her. Bloody rags, discarded tools, shattered glass reflecting the flickering light. Each item looked more sinister than the last, a macabre collection that threatened to unravel her sanity. Then she noticed a shadow dart behind the equipment loom, a figure, quick and deliberate. Her breath hitched. "Who is there?" she called out, but her voice barely penetrated the darkness, swallowed by anticipation. Silence. The conveyor continued its sickening display. A stench, reminiscent of decay, rolled in with the air. Suddenly, she felt the weight of eyes upon her and spun around, heart pounding, desperate for a glimpse of whoever or whatever was lurking just out of sight. "Get out!" A voice suddenly hissed from somewhere deep within the factory, fresh panic exploding in her chest. It sounded urgent, laced with fear. "You shouldn't be here." The shout jolted her, but it also lit a fire deep within. She couldn't stay, couldn't hide anymore. Choices swirled in her mind like a fever dream. Find the person who had cried out, or run for her life. But before she could decide, the truck's low rumble echoed outside, and headlights flickered beneath the factory doors as they swung open, spilling light into the shadows. Time stopped. The fear in her gut was palpable, but a darker anxiety filled the air. Who was in the truck? What did they want? Sarah's instincts screamed at her to move, to choose quickly. She could either confront the unknown lurking in the shadows or face the ominous figures encroaching at the door. The weight of impending dread loomed around her as she prepared to make her choice. Would she plunge deeper into the darkness, or flee back into the night? She could almost hear the shadows whispering, promising secrets if she dared to uncover them. With a final glance behind her, she stepped forward, uncertainty blossoming as she ventured deeper into the unknown. The darkness swallowed Sarah as she plunged deeper into the factory's maw. The eerie silence hummed with tension, and each faint creak seemed to echo her decisions, mocking her choices. She raised her hand, the dim glow of the bulb illuminating the air thick with dust. Every move felt wrong somehow, each beat of her heart a hammer pounding against a locked door of fear. "Get out!" echoed in her mind, the speaker's urgency cutting through the air like a jagged knife. Who were they? Were they a threat or a warning? The deeper she ventured into the factory, the more she felt like a mouse caught in a trap, lured by bait, and now facing the snap of the jaws. The gust of wind swept through the cavernous space, sending a ripple of anxiety through her. It came from the direction of the flickering window, cold and unwelcoming. She took a step, shifting left to avoid the conveyor belt's gruesome offerings, and then another. Each sound, the rustle of her coat, the scrape of her shoes, felt amplified, too loud in the oppressive quiet. Suddenly, a sound. A soft, scuttling patter across the concrete. She turned sharply, breath hitching in her throat, straining to catch sight of whatever skittered in the shadows. Nothing. Just the darkness thickening around her. "Stop it," she whispered, trying to quell the panic rising within. She squared her shoulders, preparing to forge ahead when a door slammed somewhere far behind her. The sound ricocheted off the tall, barren walls, twisting her stomach in knots. Her heart raced as she whipped around, eyes wide, searching, but the shadows remained stubbornly unresponsive. The urgency to find whoever had called out was now matched by a primal instinct to survive. Ignoring the instinct to run, Sarah chose to press forward towards the flickering window. Shadows shifted along the walls, and she felt a presence, something just outside her periphery, sliding through the darkness and enough to turn her blood cold. When she finally reached the window, she peered out into the night. The headlights of the truck illuminated the faces of two men, grotesque and hunched, faces twisted in a mix of intent and confusion. They were rummaging through her car, her sanctuary, her escape route, while the night grew thicker with tension. She was trapped. Then came the unmistakable sound of laughter, low and guttural, rising from deep within the factory. It sent a chill that burned through her veins. Was it those men? Or was it something else entirely? Before she could process more, movement fluttered in her periphery. A silhouette darted behind a stack of rusted barrels. She turned, heart thudding, and caught a glimpse. A glimmering eye, bright and predatory, watching her intently. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving the air thick with claustrophobic dread. Sarah pressed against the wall, barely breathing. Every hair on her body stood on end. She had to keep moving. But the laughter grew louder, swirling around her, mocking her desperation. It wasn't just behind her. It was everywhere, echoing through the very bones of the factory. In a surge of adrenaline, she turned toward the back of the factory. Grotesque shadows flickered, wrapping around her like tendrils. The laughter became a chorus, filling the gaps in her resolve. Footsteps approached from behind. Her feet finally unfroze, sprinting toward the rear exit. As she neared a door, she felt a crushing weight against her chest. The shadows coalesced. A hand, cold and clammy, gripped her shoulder. She spun around, gasping, ready to scream. "Run!" came an urgent hiss from the figure she'd glimpsed earlier, now revealing a gaunt face streaked with dirt and fear. "You need to leave now." But even as she prepared to flee, the exit vanished behind a curtain of darkness. The air thickened, and all at once Sarah understood that there were more secrets buried here than she ever imagined, and then everything went black. Where was she? What had just happened? The shadows were closing in again, swirling, suffocating. The darkness felt alive. It pulsed around Sarah, almost breathing with her. She couldn't move, couldn't see, only the weight of the night pressing down. Panic swelled in her chest like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her. Was she truly alone, or were they coming for her? She blinked. The void receded just enough for her to see the outline of the figure. The gaunt face loomed closer, the eyes wide and frantic, reflecting fear back at her. "You can't stay here." It was a voice that trembled raw, pleading. "Who are you?" she gasped, her voice barely escaping her lips. "What is happening? Doesn't matter. We need to go." The urgency in the figure's tone struck a chord in her, snapping her from the fog of terror. But where? The shadows shifted as if they had a will of their own, coiling around her ankles like serpents. She felt the pull of the darkness, a desperate call in the swirling air, 1,000 whispers promising safety and surrender. But she couldn't let it take her. Not now. Not when her heart thudded in rebellion against that suffocating invitation. With a surge of adrenaline, she tore herself away from the figure and plunged into the depths of the factory again. The muffled laughter echoed in the air, now a sinister choir beckoning her closer. A wave of despair washed over her. Where was the exit? Where was the light? "Follow me," the figure shouted from somewhere behind her, their voice slicing through the darkness that threatened to engulf her. She hated to admit it, but she had to trust them. She stumbled towards the sound, desperate to unite against whatever horror lurked within. She stumbled through the maze of machinery. Her fingers grazed the cold metal edges, each one a reminder of her frailty. The laughter grew bolder, more jeering. Sarah's breath hitched as she felt something shift in the shadows, something moving, and she turned to look. Behind her, twisted shapes coalesced into a grotesque form, a creature step by step revealing itself, elongated limbs, hollow eyes, and a mouth split in a sinister grin. She screamed, turning back towards the figure as the creature lunged, darting closer. But that figure was fading, too, slipping back into the darkness. "Stay with me," she yelled, her voice cracking. "No, keep going." Their voice echoed back, strained but resolute. Sarah's instincts took over. She ran blindly, careening through the factory's maze, but every turn felt like a trap. The cold grip of despair began wrapping around her heart again. She turned a corner and skidded to a halt. A wall loomed high in front of her, painted with the peeling remnants of faded warnings. Panic clawed at her throat. She could hear it now, the creature's growl, low and ravenous, resonating from behind. Up there. She scrambled to a stack of crates, hastily forming some path to escape. She hoisted herself up, adrenaline providing a false strength. The laughter erupted louder, deepening, shaking her resolve. She climbed higher, desperate to escape the jaws of whatever awaited her below. Suddenly, something slammed into the base of the crates. She felt the violent tremor, a warning bell ringing in her ears. "Sarah." The voice was distant now, hazy. It was fading. "You have to get out now." A desperate scream erupted as the crates wobbled, the world tilting dangerously. She lunged for the ledge, fingertips grazing the metal before losing her hold. The darkness opened up from below, beckoning with promises she could barely understand. She crashed down, engulfed again by the shadows. But this time she didn't scream. Only silence existed now, wrapping around her like an embrace. And then she heard the laughter again, echoing, mingling with a voice, "You shouldn't have come here, now you're one of us." A pull of dread clouded her mind, wrapping her in a shroud of thickening shadows. But there was a glimmer, a spark in the haze. What was that? Could there be a way back? The weight of darkness pressed heavier around her. But beyond it, she felt something stirring, an urge to fight against the pull. A tiny flicker of defiance rose inside her. In that moment, she realized she wasn't just running to escape, but to uncover the grim truth. What horrible secret lay hidden within these walls? Her heart raced as she prepared to face the horror once more. The shadows swirled around Sarah, thick and suffocating, pulling her into a void filled with gnawing uncertainty. She fought against the fog, focusing on the glimmer of faint, flickering light somewhere ahead. Clenching her fists, she took a step forward, forcing herself deeper into the inky blackness. With each movement, the laughter echoed louder, surrounding her like an ominous chorus. "Join us," they seemed to whisper, a taunting melody that sent shivers racing down her spine. She stumbled, hands brushing against cold, rusted machinery, making her skin crawl. What had happened here? What had she just become a part of? The light ahead blinked again. Hope surged through her veins. Could it lead to an escape? With shaky breaths, she took off, weaving around the hulking forms of abandoned machinery. She could hear the creature, a relentless predator, drawing closer. Its roars pulsed in the darkness, rhythmically matching her pounding heartbeat. Then she stopped. Just ahead, beneath a darkened archway, the faint light pulsed as if alive. It seemed almost inviting. As she stepped closer, the laughter twisted into a shriek, an angry wind that rushed past her, trying to push her back. Fear gripped her throat. Something was wrong. "Turn back." She heard a voice screech behind her. It sounded like the gaunt figure from before. Had they been trying to protect her? But her body betrayed her, drawn to the light like a moth to flame. She stepped through the archway. A surge of brightness blinded her, and she fell to her knees, panting. When her eyes adjusted, she saw an expansive room, filled with strange, flickering images on the walls, faces twisted in agony, shadows stretched long in despair. The figures she once encountered in the factory danced around the edges of her vision, their hollow eyes fixed on her with an unsettling mix of longing and malice. "Welcome." The word resonated like a dark gong. The light flickered again, revealing a grotesque throne at the far end of the room, where the shadowed figures seemed to converge. "Join us," they chanted, and a cold dread pooled in Sarah's stomach. The figure in the throne shifted, towering above the rest. The voice was overwhelming, slipping into her mind like a thief, promising everything she'd ever wanted. "Why can't you see? We're not just shadows." The face that emerged from the gloom was a mirror of the gaunt figure, yet twisted into something monstrous. "You were chosen. You're already part of us." "No." The word tore from her throat, desperation fueling her protest. Panic surged once more, but unease thrummed through her veins. What if escaping meant leaving behind everyone she'd lost? The shadows appeared to sense her growing conflict, pressing in tighter, gnashing their teeth, a ravenous tide demanding tribute. "Fight it, Sarah." The voice rang out again, more desperate this time, pushing through the din. "You need to wake up. Wake up." She was torn. Could this be a dream? A tormenting nightmare spiraling beyond her control? Or was it real? Suddenly, the walls flickered with firelight, illuminating the silhouettes of countless others, just like her, trapped in an endless cycle of despair, a carnival of lost souls. They reached for her, their eyes hollow echoes of her own fear. Could she reclaim herself? Or was the darkness too powerful, too intoxicating? As the creatures lunged towards her, their mouths splitting into manic grins, one thought resonated louder than the rest: what if there was no escape? She took a trembling step back, glancing at the loom of shadows behind her. The gaunt figure beckoned her from the dark corner of her fear, their face a haunting affirmation. "Now you must choose." With the laughter crescendoing around her, Sarah faced the fading light behind her and the monstrous figures closing in from all sides. Would she plunge deeper into the darkness to face the truth of what she was becoming? The final moment of decision echoed in her mind as she felt the pull of the shadows pressing against her. The choice loomed heavy. To fall, or to fight, to join, or to run. What would the cost be for either choice? Tormented by indecision, Sarah felt her heart gallop like a horse in flight, caught between the promise of warmth and the light and the sinister allure of shadows ready to suffocate her. The laughter twisted, shaping itself into something palpable, threatening, mocking, like a poisonous fog wrapping around her mind. They were closing in. The grotesque figures reached for her with skeletal fingers, their intentions hungry. The echo of "Join us" became a chaotic cacophony, pounding in her ears, drowning out her thoughts and smothering her hope. No, the shout ripped her from her paralysis. The taste of adrenaline burned like metal on her tongue, fueling her resolve to fight. Summoning every ounce of strength, she broke into a sprint, the light behind her dimming, the shadows swaying like leaves in the wind, predatory. With every step, the chill of despair clawed at her back. The flickering lights danced erratically, casting sharp shapes on the walls that felt more like vultures than mere shadows. Fleeing, she plunged deeper into the murk, each pulse of the light becoming more frantic, more unstable. "Fight it!" rang the gnawing voice once again. But it felt distant now, as if the gaunt figure was already swallowed by the consuming darkness they had warned her about. The incessant laughter wrapped around her limbs, slowing her down, dragging at her legs, pulling her towards the throne that loomed ominously on the far side of the room. She skidded to a halt just before it, breathless, wide-eyed. The throne pulsed with an insatiable hunger, a vortex that dared her to approach. The figures danced closer, their twisted bodies melding with the darkness, forming an army ready to capture her soul. She clutched her chest, heart racing wildly as the air thickened, suffocating and filled with desperation. "Why fight what you cannot change?" The sinister voice hissed from the figure that still towered over them all. "You are already one of us." A deal she couldn't comprehend pressed against her mind, its weight heavy like iron chains. Images flashed through her thoughts, memories of laughter, warmth, and love, all swept away by the darkness that had consumed them. Were they truly gone, or had they also been absorbed into this nightmarish cycle? "No," she screamed, panic igniting within her. In a surge of fear-driven clarity, she turned to face the looming shadows. "I want to give in. I want to let you take me." As if hearing her declaration, the shadows recoiled momentarily, hissing in outrage. But the laughter morphed into something more sinister, a high-pitched wail that screamed for her surrender. Fighting through the overwhelming tide, she caught a glimpse of something flickering amongst the shadows, a key, a spark, an echo of hope, lost and buried, but still flickering. She lunged forward instinctively, crashing into the oncoming mass of darkness. The moment her palm made contact with the easy brightness, a surge of energy coursed through her, weaving through every anxious fiber of her being. But instead of the liberation she sought, a horrific rift opened within it. Shadows writhed and twisted, and screams escaped like lost souls set free. "Look at what you have awakened." The monstrous figure shrieked as the shadows erupted around Sarah, swirling violently like an uncontrolled storm. She stumbled backward again, fear blazing through her veins, swallowed by confusion and the madness surrounding her. Was this the escape she longed for, or the beginning of a fate far worse than merging with the darkness? Just then, a thin strand of light reached out from the chaos, a beacon of hope piercing through the shadows. This time, it wasn't a threat, it felt like a lifeline. Will Sarah grasp it, risking everything for a chance at freedom? Or will she find herself irrevocably pulled into the horror that beckons from the shadows? As she teetered at a perilous brink, unsure of where this path would lead, the chaos around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move. What awaited her on this razor's edge? The chaos settled momentarily, as if the very air was waiting, bated breath held in the clutches of the unknown. Sarah stared at the flickering strand of light, its glow unwavering and inviting. Was it a way out, or merely another trap? But the shadows behind her twitched impatiently, their forms quivering with dark hunger. Time was slipping through her fingers. With a resolute breath, she reached for the light. The moment her fingers brushed against its radiant warmth, a surge shot through her like electric fire. Instead of opening a path, the light erupted with blinding brilliance, engulfing her in a cocoon of heat. The shadows shrieked in outrage, their wails a symphony of despair and gnashing teeth, and claws clawing at the very fabric of her being. The brightness stretched and twisted, pulling her further into a void where reality blurred. She felt weightless, free, yet tethered by the specters of her past. Each heartbeat sent another rush of memories flooding back, smiling faces, laughter in the sunshine, sweet embraces punctuated by warmth, then they twisted, turned into shadows, lost whispers haunting her. Twisted echoes pushed further into her mind, pleading and mournful, an agonizing dance of the dead lingering around her. "Why are you fighting?" A chilling voice slithered through the light, unmistakably familiar yet warped. "You have the power to join us. Let go of your pathetic fear." Terror gripped her heart. Memories of her family, her mother's soft laughter, her brother's cheeky smile reached for her from the abyss, their voices mingling with the grotesque laughter of the shadows. The twisted figures drew nearer, their hands now grasping at the edges of the light, hungry to consume whatever flicker of life remained. "I am not," she gasped, the weight of their expectations heavy on her chest. "I'm not one of you." And in a moment of defiance, she drew on the spark of light, weaving through it, pulling it in tightly around her. It encased her like a shield, growing brighter with her determination. The shadows writhed in panic, their forms distorting, faces stretching into grotesque visages of anger and despair. "I will fight," Sarah shouted defiantly. "I will fight for my family, for the light." A wave surged through her, the light pulsating rhythmically, almost as if responding to her fierce will. The shadows recoiled, hissing like feral animals caught in the brightness, their fingers flailing in desperation. They could reach her no longer, yet the grip of fear still curled powerfully around her heart. But the flickering flame beckoned louder than the whispering darkness. Clutching the radiant shield closer, she felt something shifting. It was a doorway. Enclosed within that beam was an escape, that brief glimpse of safety they sought to suppress. The shadows, now disorganized, fell back, their haunting cries becoming distorted echoes, as horrific shapes melted into the dark corners of the room. With no time to lose, she lunged toward the light, her heart racing, hoping to break free from the suffocating grasp of the shadows. She pushed through, only to feel the piercing chill of the darkness clawing at her heels. "Flee if you must, but you can't escape your fate." The monstrous leader's howl clawed at her consciousness, vibrating through her being. She didn't stop, forcing herself forward, the blinding flash engulfing her, pulling her down a spiraling path of uncertainty. What awaited her on the other side? Were the shadows truly defeated, or had she merely postponed their inevitable return? As she stumbled into what felt like the edge of reality, a horrifying truth loomed: there was far more out there than mere darkness. And she had no idea just how deep the nightmare ran. The world splintered around Sarah as she emerged from the blinding light, gasping for breath. She wasn't in the same cold chamber anymore. She was sprawled on hard pavement, disoriented. The air tasted different, tainted, heavy with an unnatural chill. She struggled to sit up, shaking off the remnants of darkness still clinging to her skin. The shadows were gone, but their whispers echoed faintly in her mind. Her heart thundered in her chest. Where was she? A dim light flickered from a nearby street lamp, casting long shadows that warped and twisted as a chilling wind swept through the empty road. An eerie silence engulfed the surroundings, interrupted only by the sound of distant rustling, a reminder of something lurking just beyond her sight. She rose unsteadily, a sense of dread washed over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. She turned, scanning the expanse of darkened streets that lay before her, but saw nothing. The houses stood like sentinels, their windows darkened like hollow eyes, watching her. A voice echoed from the back of her mind, urgent and familiar. Run. Was it her own pleading? Or was it the shadow's taunt? She didn't stick around to find out. Instinct kicked in, propelling her forward. Each step felt labored, as if the ground beneath her was holding her back. She sprinted, feeling the weight of unseen forces trailing her, breathing down her neck, stoking the flames of panic that surged within her chest. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she darted past the crumbling facades, desperately seeking escape. The night air was thick, almost suffocating, thick with the aroma of damp earth and decay. Whispers wrapped around her, seeping from the cracked walls, words she couldn't distinguish. Sarah. She froze, a cold shiver racing down her spine. The sound wrapped itself around her, familiar yet distorted, beckoning her to turn. A glimpse of shadow slipped into the corner of her eye. "Who is there?" she shouted, voice trembling. She didn't expect an answer, but the absence of one felt worse. She pushed herself harder, the pavement stretching into an endless road, darkness enveloping her like a shroud. Random thoughts sprang to life, prickling the edges of her consciousness. What if the light wasn't a rescue? What if it was a more sinister trap? Suddenly, a loud crash snapped her from her stupor. It resonated from a nearby alley, followed by unmistakable rustling. The shadows leaped once more, fleeing, whispering, hungry. She glanced back, a sharp intake of breath stealing her breath away. Shapes emerged from the void, grotesque and familiar, echoing her darkest fears. A cruel commotion of shadows that came alive, reaching for her. "No," she gasped, her feet pounding against the ground like a frantic drum. The alleyway was narrow, littered with refuse and debris. She had nowhere left to run. Panic surged through her, hot and suffocating. Then she saw it. A door, half ajar, beckoning amidst the shadows. Without a second thought, Sarah squeezed through, slamming it shut behind her. The cold metal shrieked deafeningly, her heart racing as she leaned against it, gasping. It felt like a sanctuary, but her relief was short-lived. The room was dim, illuminated by a single bulb hanging low from the ceiling. Graffiti-covered walls spoke of previous despair. "They're coming for you," it read, scrawled in desperate, jagged lines. Then she noticed the unsettling detail in the room, a mirror, cracked and stained, reflecting not just her image but something else. A pair of eyes stared back, blacker than the night, piercing through the dull surface with a hunger that made her skin crawl. They weren't hers. "Welcome back," a voice whispered from the depths of the shattered glass, as the horrifying realization settled upon her. The light hadn't freed her from darkness. It had brought her directly into its embrace. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. "Please no," she pleaded, stumbling back. The laughter that erupted from the mirror sent cold chills racing through her limbs, sealing her fate as the eyes shimmered with malicious intent. What had she truly unleashed? The door rattled violently behind her, and she could hear the shadows clawing at it. Desperate, she glanced back at the mirror, her reflection morphing into the monstrous forms she had just escaped. "Join us," it hissed, the invitation woven with doom. In that moment, Sarah realized the horror was far from over. She had to make a choice, but what would save her? As the door shuddered against the force outside, a thought lingered. What if the key to her survival lay within the very darkness she feared? Or was it already too late? As the shadows pressed against the door, the room began to tremble. Would she embrace the darkness, or defy it for one last chance at the light? As Sarah's heart raced against the backdrop of whispers and shadows, she locked eyes with her grotesque reflection in the cracked mirror. The vibrant light she had chased now felt like a cruel joke, illuminating only the depths of her nightmares. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere left to escape. The door shuddered violently, shadows clawing for entry, hungry for her. "No," she gasped, choking on the fear. "I want to let you in." Her voice rang defiantly in the small room, pushing back against the darkness. But the laughter grew louder, more distorted, mocking her resolve. With trembling hands, she reached into her pocket, the remnants of a silver locket pressing against her palm. The image of her children offered a flicker of hope. Holding it tight, she fought to remember their laughter, their warmth lost in her heart but undying in her spirit. "Join us," the mirror hissed, its voice sticky and seductive. "No," she screamed, anger bubbling up from within her. "I am not like you." The mirror rattled, its surface rippling as the shadows writhed, shrieking in frustration. That's when Sarah felt it, a surge of energy flowing from the locket, its warmth spreading like wildfire through her veins. In that moment of vulnerability, clarity struck hard, a realization that the answer lay not in fleeing but in facing her fears. Perhaps to reclaim what had been lost, to empower herself against the encroaching blackness, she had to confront the darkness head-on. The door splintered, the shadows pouring into the room like water flooding a dam. They twisted and curled, reaching, searching for her. She took a step closer to the mirror, the power of her memories rallying behind her. Enough. The words sliced through the cacophony, steady and fierce. Raising the locket high, she felt courage swell in her chest, radiating like the sun. You have no power over me. The laughter faltered, faltering under her defiance. With every ounce of strength, she thrust the locket toward the mirror. The light flickered into a frenzy, illuminating the room, spilling over the shadowy figures that pulsed against the wall. They shrieked, a high-pitched disdain filling the air as the darkness writhed beneath the light's onslaught. With one last push, she cried, I reject you. The mirror shattered under the force of her forceful will, light bursting forth in a brilliant wave that pushed against everything dark, everything cold. Time froze as the shadowy figures dissolved, their outlines shuddering before being consumed by the brilliance of her memories. In that moment, Sarah cast aside her fear and with it, the shackles of despair. As the remaining shards of the mirror fell, Sarah felt herself being drawn into the vortex of light, her surroundings whirling as the laughter faded into echoes. Suddenly, she tumbled onto familiar ground, her quiet neighborhood street, bathed in the soft glow of the street lamps. The air around her was still thick with silence, but the shadows had retreated. She breathed a ragged sigh of relief, her heart pounding as she stood on solid ground. Just ahead, the park beckoned, its familiarity easing her panic. As she walked toward home, ghostly memories lingered, but they no longer suffocated her. Instead, each step away from that factory cemented her triumph over dark whispers. The faces that had haunted her faded into the light, pure relief washing over her. When she finally reached her front door, the weight of the night began to lift. As she stepped inside, she could hear her children giggling, a sound that was music to her worn heart. Mom! They squealed, running into her arms. Sarah sank to her knees, holding them tightly. They were safe, real, and full of life. She vowed never again would she let fear steal from her the beauty of the everyday. Her gaze drifted to the locket, now shining in the dim light. It was a reminder her strength, her love, and the shadows would never own her again. She whispered a silent promise to those who had been lost but were never truly gone. Leaving that darkness behind, Sarah fully embraced the warmth of the light, but shadows lurked beyond the edges of her memories. Would they come back? The thought hovered in her mind as she tucked her children in, ensuring they slept soundly. With resolve hardening in her chest, she stepped outside into the night one last time. She swore she wouldn't just stand idly by when darkness threatened to creep back in. The stars twinkled above, unaware of the struggles waged beneath them. Yet, in their distance, she found comfort, a reminder that even the darkest nights eventually yielded to dawn. As she stood there, taking in a breath of the cool night air, one thought echoed in her mind. She would be ready. And she would fight. Now, you need to be part of this journey. So subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss future exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because it really helps. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense ending. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how important your support is to keep this channel alive. Your voice matters.